Hey guys, this is the 2011 Nissan Leaf. I bought it about 2 weeks ago, and I absolutely love it. It's my first electric car, and it's probably the nicest car I've ever owned. And today I'm going to be taping, screwing, and bolting all of this onto it to make this into a solar-powered Nissan Leaf. So, quick disclaimer, I'm not an electrician or an automotive tech. I've never done anything like this before. This is my first time trying all this. But that's kind of the point, is that anybody with no special skills can do this conversion. You don't need any kind of special training or education or background knowledge. It's all a lot simpler than it looks. So let's get started. Okay, so the first component of this system we're going to put in is going to be the batteries. The batteries are going to be the biggest, heaviest, and most expensive component of the system. And as you can see, they don't leave a whole lot of room for everything else that we have to get in here. So we're basically putting the batteries in first and then building the rest of the system up around them. While they are very heavy, you really don't want them sliding around, obviously, in the back of the car when the whole thing is done. So we're going to have to find a way to anchor them in the truck, or in the trunk. My solution that I'm going to try is double-sided adhesive Velcro, and we're going to put some of that on the bottom of the batteries and on the bottom of the trunk there. And then I'm going to drill a little hole in the siding over here and over here. Put the hook of the winch through those two holes and basically go in there and ratchet it tight so that these things are secured from the bottom by the Velcro and from the sides by the strap. Okay, so I pop out the little hood of the hatchback there. Grab my permanent marker, mark around the batteries where I want the hooks of the ratchet clamp to go through. The plastic material they use for the interior back there is pretty easy to drill through and work with. I didn't see any sensitive electronics or anything else back there to really watch out for. But as you're drilling these holes, you can drill just through the plastic and then look back there and make sure you're not about to hit anything. But I didn't find anything back there that I'd be too worried about drilling into. Then I go to pull the batteries out so I can access here to drill it. You'll notice me really hefting them out of there. Those batteries weigh 60 pounds a piece. I went with the Renogy deep cycle gel batteries. I chose them basically because while I was working all the kinks out of this system, I wanted to go with the cheapest option that was available while I figured everything out. Those 4 batteries cost a total of $1,000. They're just under half the total cost of the solar system. Now that I've worked with it a bunch and used it and driven around in it and have some experience with it, looking back on it and moving forward, I'll choose the lithium batteries in the future. I could replace, each one of those batteries weighs 60 pounds, so that's 240 pounds altogether. And I could replace that with one lithium battery that weighs 60 pounds that would have the same capacity and would have a much longer lifespan. So in the long run, it would be a much better value. And that's definitely what I'll do moving forward. I'll even probably go back and modify this system that way. Okay, so I've got the holes drilled. I'm bringing the batteries back into the bed of the back of the vehicle. I put the Velcro on adhere it to the bottom of the vehicle first and then put on the bottom of the battery, and then the sides of the battery too, so that when I drop those batteries back in the trunk, they've got Velcro contact both on the bottom of them with the vehicle and on the side of them with all the other batteries. And after I got them all set in there, I gave it a little tug and they really set well. Alright, here's a close-up of what everything looked like once it's all settled in back there. Each one of these batteries theoretically holds about 1.2 kilowatt hours of charge, but you can really only charge them down about halfway without damaging the battery. So it comes out to about 2.5 kilowatt hours of maximum storage for this system. Pull that ratchet tight enough, the ratchet clamp tight enough to hold them steady, but not so tight that it's going to, rip that plastic siding out of the vehicle. And give it a nice little tug at the end, and it's very, very steady back there. I've zipped around some corners since I put this thing in there, and really given it the gas a few times, and the batteries haven't budged. Okay, so this is one of the steps of the project where it's going to save you a lot of time and headache to measure 2, 3, 4 times if you have to really find out where you want to make your cuts and your bends and fit it in there just perfectly. I measured a height of about 11 inches from the floor of the trunk to go over the battery bank, fit in the wall there. So 11 inches in, I'm going to cut out some of these little supporting pieces of wire here so I can get this shelving to bend at a clean 90. Okay, that wire rack is a piece of generic closet shelving that I picked up at Home Depot. I really like it for this project because it's inexpensive, it's easy to bend into pretty much the exact shape you want it, and those little metal spokes that you have left once you cut off some of the other wires are perfect anchor points for going into the back and sides of the back of the Nissan. Alright, now that we've got this cut out, it should fold right here along this line right here where we want it to. Okay, we got a reasonably good 90 in it. That right there is going to fit right over the edge of that bank. I'm going to go in and cut out this very bottom layer of cross wiring so that I have this much of about 2 inches of an exposed spoke there that I can drill holes and drop down right there into the floor of the trunk and really secure it, because we're going to be putting the rest of the system on top of here, and you really want everything very secure back there. Okay, so we've cut it down where we've got some nice exposed kind of posts sticking out of there. I took these measurements in the bed of the truck and marked on the bed of the Leaf, marked them with X's where I want those to sit down into the frame of the vehicle, not very far, just in half an inch is really all you need to drill down into. And now I'm going to drill those holes and see if I can. So we've got our shelf cut, measured out. It's going to be a good fit and allow us to stack the second half of this system, the charge controller and the inverter, and fit them all in the back of the trunk. The next step is to hook up our batteries. On the left hand side is going to be our connection to the charge controller, which is basically the brains of the whole system. It takes the power from the solar panels and distributes it to the batteries. And we're also going to, over here on the right hand side, put a battery charge controller called the Noco Genius. This is going to allow you to do two things. It's kind of a battery health maintenance device. It'll just make your batteries last longer, make sure they charge evenly and slowly. It'll also, if you want to use this as just a backup battery bank on weeks when it's really cloudy and rainy, you can plug this thing in. This is going to hook up to all your batteries individually, and it will charge your batteries when there's no sun out, and you can just, charge your car right off this and use this as a backup battery bank. Okay, so this is the first step in what it's going to look like. This right here is our main wire. It runs through a fuse to our, and it's going to plug into our charge controller. You'll have this exact same looking hardware minus the fuse coming out of the negative lead over the positive lead over here. The wire is the one that's going to connect all these in parallel, and this little lead right here that I've got taped down is going to run to your Noco battery charger. And the way we'll do this is just on all the batteries, attach these little eye leads right here, and then it should all tuck in the little gap behind the batteries and between that and the wall of the vehicle here. Safety note, other than throwing out your back, lifting the batteries, the part of this project, if you get hurt, where you're going to hurt yourself, is with these exposed leads of the battery, especially the long cords like the one that goes to your charge controller. You'll see I've got it taped up. That's just because I'm absent-minded, and as I work on this, it's easy to get distracted. And if I've got one long lead coming out of my negative here and one long lead coming out of my positive, and I forget where these live, hot, exposed wires are, it's easy to accidentally pick two up at the same time and not thinking about it and really shock the heck out of yourself. So if you've got long wires with exposed leads on them, even these little ones here, while you're connecting them from battery to battery, just be hyper aware. If I screw this one in and this end is still loose and I just brush it aside without thinking and it contacts another terminal, it's going to throw off a whole bunch of sparks, maybe shock me, maybe damage or ruin the battery. So be very aware when you are wiring everything up at this stage of it. Okay, now that we've got everything wired up, we're going to put the cage back on top of it. The battery wiring and security phase of this project is complete. Okay, so you notice I've got two 4-gauge wires running off that far right side terminal in that battery bank. The wires leading off the right side go to your inverter, and your inverters like to have big, thick battery cables running to them. I thought the two 4-gauge cables would be thick enough, but they weren't, so you're going to want a 0-gauge wire running off the right side of that bank to your inverter. I go back later in the project and replace this once I find out that doesn't work. That cage snaps into place real well once done.
It's in there tight. Okay, now that we've got our shelf properly secured over the batteries, it's time to start building up our second level. The first step is to attach the charge controller, and we're just going to set that on top of there and use zip ties. If I notice a lot of rattling as I'm driving after I finish this, I'll go back and probably put some foam shims under there to reduce the noise, but right now I think just zip tying it to that shelf will work perfectly. Okay, the charge controller has been secured by zip ties. Now we are going to take off the plastic cover plate and hook up the cables we had come out of the far left hand side of the bank that go to the charge controller. We're going to take that electrical tape off. Black obviously will go to battery negative, and the red cable will go to battery positive. Okay, as soon as we get those two connections in there, you will see the system come to life. One of the reasons I chose the Renogy kind of brand name for this project is I really like how user-friendly and intuitive their hardware is. When we hook up the solar panels, that number will light up, and it just, everything is very easy to figure out, even if you've never done this before like me. And their customer support line is also amazing. I called them probably 10 times as I was figuring all this out with various questions, and they were always available. An actual human being picks up the phone, and they will take the time to help you figure out any issues that you're having. Now we're going to put that cover back on and attach the solar panels to the roof. So after I hooked up the charge controller, I just kind of stepped back and took a look at it, and was this the sketch factor of all this is pretty high already, and I mitigated a little bit of that by covering up all these exposed metal terminals, these charged like metal terminals with electrical tape. I'll do the same thing with my red electrical tape on the other terminals, so everything that is charge conducting and dangerous is covered up back here. So after we get the batteries connected to the charge controller, the next step is the solar panels. Set them on the vehicle in a way that is as symmetric as you can eyeball, and then go back with your measuring tape and just make sure that the distances there and there even. Same thing with the ones on the top, so that you get that nice, sleek, symmetrical appearance. And after you get those on there, hook up the wiring. The Renogy wiring is very user-friendly. It's just a negative and positive plug. Pretty much anybody can figure it out. On the panels, they are marked. I don't know if you can see that in the sunlight, but right there, there's the negative or positive reading. So we're hooking up our negative ones first. Plug that in, easy peasy. Same thing with the 200 watt panels on top. And they will all run through one of these. They're all wired up in parallel, so all three of your panels are going in right there. The voltage out is on the other side. If we walk around the car, you can see this is our wire that's going to carry our negative, all our negative current from the panels. We're going to run it through the window here, and we will hook that up to the charge controller where the PV negative, photovoltaic negative, is. Same thing obviously with the PV positive right there. And once we get all that hooked up, this charge controller will tell us exactly how many watts we're getting from it. Okay, so here's everything fully wired up. This little gap in the paneling right here is perfect for hiding that wire down there. I think I'll be able to clean the front up real nice so the wiring will be mostly invisible. The back's going to be a project for sure, hiding all those parallel connectors and all the extra wires. I should have bought a feed wire to go from the front panel to the back panels that was about 5 feet shorter, so I wouldn't have been left with all this. But I will figure that out as I move forward. So the negative and positive feed lines, the lines that carry your current from your panels to your charge controller, I'm running through the back passenger side window there. They'll snake down right through there, run behind the seats where they're nice and invisible, and I'll tape them up over here so everything's secure. And once you get them hooked into your charge controller, it will start giving you up to it's instantaneously accurate readings on your voltage and your wattage coming in from the solar panel system. And you can see it shows as a little graphic there that shows it's charging the batteries. It's only getting 66 watts right now, even though we've got 250 watts of solar panels on the roof, because that sunlight is hitting it at a very acute angle. It's not getting the full direct noon sunlight. It's getting what is it? 6 o'clock in the afternoon sunlight. So it's only catching something like 20% of what it will be at noon. From here, we're going to set the inverter right here. The inverter will pull its charge from these wires right here that we've left hanging out. These 4 wires right here will all go to the inverter, which will go right there. Okay, so we've got our solar panels hooked up. They're giving us juice. The next step is to install our inverter, which our car charger actually plugs into and fuels up the vehicle while you're parked. But the problem is that this beefy car charger designed to run off a wall outlet draws 1,400 watts. And our solar panels are only going to give us in full sunlight about 250. So what's going to happen is these batteries down here are going to, you're going to be pulling more fuel, a lot more out of them than you're putting in. And with these, with lithium batteries, you can actually drain them theoretically to zero for hundreds and hundreds of cycles, and it won't damage the batteries. With these gel batteries, you don't really want to go below 50%. You start compromising the lifespan of the battery, which is the most expensive component of the system. So we need something that's going to detect when these have been drained a certain amount, and is basically going to cut off feed to the inverter while the solar panels fuel the batteries back up. And once that voltage goes above a certain point, it'll click the voltage back onto the inverter, and the car can start fueling up again without ever draining your batteries below a level that's going to affect their longevity. So the part that's going to do that is our Smart Battery Protect. This is the Victron 200 amp Smart Battery Protect, and we are going to install that in between the batteries and the inverter, and that's going to basically cut off the voltage to this once the batteries are drained below a certain level, and that will protect our batteries and make sure they last a long time and make sure this car saves us a whole bunch of money. Okay, so I took this big 4-0 gauge wire that's running off that last terminal over here, and I had connected it to the voltage in for the battery protect. The voltage out for the battery protect was going to run to the back of that positive intake on the inverter there. And it's funny because when I run the wires straight from the batteries to the inverter, it turns on, we get that green I'm happy light, and it works fine. But when I run it through the battery protect and turn it on, it pops on for a second, and then this little fault light flashes at me. So I think what's happening is, as the inverter kicks on and starts pulling current through the battery protect, the battery protect constricts the current flowing through there somehow and causes this inverter to read like it has a thinner gauge wire running to it, and so it throws up that signal. I've got an idea for how to work around that I'm going to be doing in a future video, but just to get it running right now so I can get this one posted while I get that battery protection system figured out, we've got a quick and easy workaround. This is the Century voltage timer switch. It's rated for 1875 watts. You can kind of see it right there. So it will handle this 1400 watt inverter, and people frequently use these. I've used them to run water pumps in times of flooding when you only want the pump to run for like an hour a day. You can set it and set the time. People use them for Christmas lights a lot, and basically it just has all your hours of the day there on a little switch that rotates, and you can push in little pins to determine what time you want something powered or not powered. So since we get 200 watts or 250 watts from our panels, and our charger pulls 1400 watts out of the system, basically what I'm going to do, and this is just a temporary fix, is go in. This little piece costs, I don't know, 20 bucks, and for 15 minutes out of every hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to set it to run. And that will balance out the amount of charge coming in from the panels with the amount of charge going out through the car charger. And it'll keep the voltage level of the batteries at a healthy level, and it'll allow us to charge it up. You can plug all this in and walk away and be rest assured that your voltage isn't going to fall to a level that's too low and damage the batteries. And so I'm going to plug that in, and then we will give the whole system a shot. Alright, this is full functionality test of the solar charging system. We've got our wattage coming in from the sunlight. It's only about 30 watts now because we're in the shade. We've got our voltage timer switch set to run for about 15 minutes every hour and 15 minutes, so your power coming in and going out is balanced. Plug this into our inverter, plug our car charger into the voltage timer. And we take our car charger and walk it around to the front. Your rear view mirror here makes a nice wire holding stand. And plug it in right there into the charging port in the front of the vehicle. I like to go ahead and close that little cap down there too. Come back around to the back and power the whole thing up. You'll see your little charging thing come on, go from ready to charge. You still got your green light on your inverter. And if you come back to the front of the vehicle, actually another thing I did is Dremel out some of this plastic right here so that I can tuck that wire in there, and removed another little piece from the back of the car door right there, about the size of the last joint in your thumb or pointer finger, so that you can close and secure the vehicle, lock it up and walk away from it while you're parked and it's charging. Come back around the front. You will see that you have your blue indicator light showing that it is effectively charging right now, turning sunlight into gasoline. If you watch this whole video from start to finish, thank you. It was a long one. These solar panels will pull about 2 kilowatt hours a day right now, which will turn into anywhere from 8 to 10 miles of functional driving distance, depending on whether or not you run the AC or how fast you go or things like that. So 10 miles a day, it's nice, but it's really still more of a proof of concept at this point. I'm going to do a whole lot more videos in the future to try and improve this and turn it from a science project into something that can possibly replace your gasoline car as your daily driver. So if that interests you, hit the subscribe button down there in the little corner of the screen. And every 2 weeks or so I'll be posting something on little ways to tweak projects like this and make them work better. Thank you.